South Africans may have to wait a little longer before they see individuals and entities implicated in state capture being brought to justice. Justice Minister Ronald Lamola told Parliament that the National Prosecuting Authority lacks funds to deal with high-profile cases. Well, for more on this conversation, we're joined by legal expert Mpumelelo Zikalala. Mpumelelo, appreciate your time this evening. Now, that statement is rather worrisome from the Minister. What do you make of it? We're faced with a situation where multiple cases have not been prosecuted, and the Minister affirms that we risk the chance of many cases not being prosecuted.
Good evening to you and also to your viewers. To me, it spells of some department which has lacked a bit of planning, has not looked into what is required of it and the type of initiatives and the effort that it needs to do so it is able to combat crime. Just remember that once you delve into the legal realm, when there's any prosecution that takes place, you need to prove beyond reasonable doubt that whichever person that you brought to court is indeed guilty. Now, if you're going to focus on the investigations and making sure that the investigations have been done properly, and you've collected enough info so that when you go to court, you've got a quality information and quality evidence, which is also qualitative in its nature, then definitely you are going to have a problem. So what the Minister is telling us is that, yes, money may have been embezzled, corruption may have taken place, however, we do not have the funds to go and prosecute those individuals, let alone being able to recover the taxpayers' funds that have been embezzled or lost through corruption. So it's basically a government telling us that we cannot go and prosecute individuals properly. So definitely this is what we're going to live with. We are basically sorry, and it ends there.
Now, despite the 5.39% increase in the medium-term budget, Minister Lamola described the allocation as inadequate. What specific challenges might arise due to this inadequacy in the first part? And the second part is you talk to a department that lacks planning. Where does that lack of planning stem from?
It stems from realizing what type of achievements you want to take. There are low-hanging fruits that you can be able to achieve. So you then say, in which instances do we have enough evidence for us to be able to go and prosecute? Let's pour funds pertaining to those so that we can be able to have experts which are going to assist us in getting these particular cases done and dusted. We need forensic investigators, for example. You need accountants. You need people who are going to be able to follow the money from the time it leaves the departments up until it gets to the person or the end user. What did the end user end up doing? In terms of the tender documents that were submitted, where were they stored, how were they stored, the individuals that were there so that we're able to hold them accountable. But most importantly, as the NPA, when you take them to court, you must have the caliber of individuals and professionals that are going to be able to defend. So when a person is being sued or being investigated and being taken to court, certainly they're going to take the best of the best legal team to come and defend them. So you must be able to meet them on par with your team as the NPA so that you have a successful run and a conviction at the end of the day. If there's no planning pertaining to that in terms of identifying these type of cases, then definitely you are going to be looked at as a department that is not able to plan, does not prioritize certain crimes, is not clear enough in terms of the recoveries. A simple exercise of saying that let's simply focus on those where we can recover funds. All those funds that we're recovering, either we take them to the end user department, you say a portion of them will remain with us so that you can be able to better investigate these type of matters. Another part of it is to say, let's look at the type of matters and the nature of these matters and then go back to the departments and say, you know, your SCM processes are not good in this particular sense. These are their weakest points, their weakest links. Try and change them by implementing this type of reforms. That is what the department or the NPA is meant to do to certain extent, so that you do not have repeat crimes being taken place where preventative measures can then be taken. So up until now, I've never heard of a single submission made by the NPA to any department to say, go and create this legislative reform when it comes to SCM measures to make sure that you're able to close the tap or stop the leaking when it comes to SCM processes and the inadequacies in the legislation that we have in our country.
Now, the DA's Glenys Breitenbach criticized the Minister Lamola, stating that he has been unable to restore faith in the justice system. So there's another aspect to this, that when the ministers come out and said, you know what, I don't have enough money to prosecute. But the DA's Glenys Breitenbach speaks to an inability or an incompetence of sort. Does the minister have capacity to lead this team on that budget? Because some of it is about improvising, as you've suggested.
Mm-hmm. Now you see, they usually say you can't congratulate a fish for swimming. So the minister is supposed to be there and provide those innovative ways, because he's been selected from many to make sure that he's able to do this particular job. Not only the minister, including the DJ and also the Director of National Public Prosecution and the people that report to them directly. So you then come up with innovative ways of saying that even if I have a small budget such as these ones, so I'm then going to be able to prosecute, and my standing or my presence within the fraternity is going to be felt because of the type of initiative which I'm able to do. As explained earlier, all that you need to do is to say, what are the low-hanging fruits that I have? What type of advice can I then be able to advise those departments to make sure that they're able to stop the leakages from taking place? Let me make sure that I have at least 2 or 3 cases in which they're going to be done and dusted. People are going to be put behind bars. Recoveries are going to have been made so that at the end of the day, I'm able to show that I'm indeed working. As it stands now, the only initiative that has taken place that has recovered money was through the State Capture Commission, in which those entities, especially the foreign-owned one, said that we are going to return the money that we were paid by the South African government. If you look at all the matters that were within the State Capture Commission, I think there's a very small number of them that have been completed, giving us the impression that the whole process was basically a waste of time. If it's not, then the question is, why aren't you prosecuting on these things, especially when you sat in and you were part of those particular sessions? So it would have been easier for you to do those investigations. So this is why I'm saying the lack of planning then says there's something that needs to be done, maybe a changing of the individuals with the higher echelons so that they can be able to get better results, or maybe the introduction of private individuals to say to them, maybe you have a much more better understanding and new innovative ways that are going to assist us when it comes to prosecution in these particular crimes. Can you please come and assist us, because we want to make sure that at the end of the day, when the person says the NPA, South African government, the only thing which is going to ring in their mind is an efficient government which is able to arrest and this is able to recover taxpayers' money that has been embezzled.
So now, you mentioned that there's been some success and a certain amount of money has been, certain prosecutions have gone through successfully, and certain organizations have said that they are going to pay back the money. So some money has been coming through. The SIU, for instance, is one organization that has been successful in recovering a huge amount of money. What happens to that money that's recovered?
It's supposed to go back to the departments where it was recovered from, or it goes back to the National Treasury, and then the National Treasury will then decide what then do we do with it. But in its truest sense, it's supposed to go back to the department, because it was budgeted for. The project that needed to be done by the particular entity which was not done, or where money was embezzled or lost through corruption, is still going to be outstanding. So there's another point in which maybe I think our politicians should look at in terms of saying, what then do we do with the monies that we've recovered? Can we still monitor what happens to those particular funds? But mostly for me, I'm a bit worried as to the legislative reform that we need. You know, if you look at Section 217 of our Constitution, it's very clear. It lists all the points when it comes to transparency, equitable share, and everyone must be able to participate. But we mostly miss this one point of looking after the previously disadvantaged. And it's usually looked at as if the minute you mention that particular name, you are speaking of corruption, you are speaking of underhanded deals taking place, or shoddy work being accepted, when the reality is not that. The reality is acknowledging that there are some injustices that happened in the past, and we must find some way of making sure that at the end of the day this is equitable. The only way in which you can be able to achieve that is through legislation and through proper empowerment, which is going to empower everyone. If you do not focus on that one, that's why you're going to have individuals cropping up and masquerading as Robin Hoods that are seeking that particular injustices, for example, through construction mafia and other mafias that are there existed. So if the department is going to close its eyes to those type of problems and not look at the legislative reform, if the NPA is also going to do the same thing, you are forever going to have this crop of criminal elements and crimes taking place, and them not being investigated and prosecuted properly. Due to them, they drive at a much more faster pace than what the NPA and also departments are actually doing to curb it.
In his response to questions posed to him in Parliament, Minister Lamola notes the NPA's significant progress in investigating corruption-related cases despite certain setbacks. Now, let's talk about, from your viewpoint, what some of the successes that the NPA has had in the last sort of 12 to 18 months.
I think it has mainly been on the COVID matters and other, let's say, procurement-related matters in which the recovery has been there. But what must be noted, though, is that sometimes the recovery is not through a court order successful prosecution that has taken place. It's due to entities that are still yet to be paid, and which an instruction will then be issued to say, don't pay this particular entity because we're still investigating. So I tend to be corrected on this point. So I think we have to be very clear in terms of saying this is the type of success that has been made. The success that I would have been able to accept and to acknowledge is the one in which individuals have been identified, they've been put through a criminal justice system, they've been found guilty, and recovery has taken place, and the recovery of that amount has then been taken back to the department where it comes from. But most importantly, in addition to the whole case starting and ending, then there are some type of advices which are coming from the NPA to the actual departments, even to national, to Parliament, to say, when you're creating the Municipal Finance Management Act or the PFMA, please make sure that you include this particular provision to create instances of corruption from taking place. A small interim measure, here's a Treasury directive which is going to ensure that there's a clear process and audit trail of how funds are then paid out. There should be no payment which is going to be made if we haven't checked that the work has actually been done. There are a number of individuals that are there, and there's a number of accountability processes that are being utilized. And the use of existing entities or existing structures such as audit committees and even MPEC when it comes to municipalities, or even scope when it comes to the national government, those particular entities should be utilized effectively to make sure that we do not have to go this extra mile of trying to recover funds, because once you go the criminal route, it is very expensive and there's no guarantee that you're going to get the money that you're looking for, let alone getting the conviction that you are seeking from those misbehaving individuals.
Now, is it fair to say that the biggest stain on the NPA's or the minister's resume would be that failed extradition attempt of the Guptas?
I would say that and amongst a lot of other things, because there's a lot of focus when it comes to state capture matters and the state capture as a whole. You have a commission that has taken place, which was meant to take place for 6 months, take place for plus minus 5 years, and has a budget that has exceeded maybe the budget of many other smaller municipalities, especially in KZN. And then the one thing which is going to be interesting, and that where taxpayers would want to know, after spending so much money and collecting so much data, how much money have you been able to recover? Recovery maybe disseminated in two aspects. One, where there's voluntary recovery, people saying we are going to pay the money ourselves, we do not want to be dragged to court. And the most important one, money that have been recovered after successful prosecution has taken place, after successful civil proceedings have then taken place. I think we would be disappointed if we get those numbers, because they are so little. What are we trying to drive at is to say, here we have a commission that took place and it has yielded results in terms of preventative measures. It has yielded results in terms of recovery of the money. It has yielded results in terms of punishing those individuals that have misbehaved. But most importantly, we've used the lessons that we've learned from the State Capture Commission, the lessons learned from doing these particular prosecutions, to make sure that this type of thing never takes place again, and we are protecting the state's coffers. At the end of the day, I think the most important intention is to say the taxpayers' monies must not be lost, and they can't be lost in this particular manner due to individuals failing to execute their mandates effectively, and due to individuals failing to execute their mandates when it comes to the prosecution effectively. I think that's what we need to focus on.
So how much of that failure to prosecute, based on the abundance of evidence that was applied by the Commission, is incompetence or politics? Are there instances where there's been political pressure not to follow through on persecutions or prosecutions?
It will be very difficult to analyze that sitting from afar, but you tend to wonder in certain instances of why are you delaying to prosecute matters where you've had the information within your disposal for a long time. Then the question would be, why wasn't the NPA, law enforcement agencies, called to the State Capture Commission to say to them, guys, are you receiving any impediments or any problems in investigating these matters? Are there any powers that be that have prevented you from doing these investigations? But most importantly for them, in order to gain the credibility of members of the public, they would have done that themselves, to say, we must be seen to be doing something as law enforcement agencies, we must be seen to be doing something as the NPA. So let's focus on those to make sure that we're able to prosecute successfully. Now, if you are going to get the extradition case, for example, failing, or not being successful. You get the case which has taken place within Free State also failing. Then says to a general member of the public, maybe there's something wrong which is taking place. Maybe there's someone who's whispering in their ears and saying that these matters should not be handled in a proper manner. Of course, it's just allegations at this stage and you stand to be corrected. However, it is those type of investigations and those type of inefficiencies that must be looked at. If at all fails, then come back and account to the members of the public, or at least Parliament, and say to them, these are the impediments that we are facing. We cannot investigate or prosecute these matters because this is what is preventing us from doing so. But provide those innovative ways, because you need them to save the credibility of the NPA and to make sure that they are able to work in an optimal manner, and they can be seen to be doing their job in line with the legislative mandate that have been given by the Constitution.
Mpumelelo, just draw for us a comparison or the links between the SIU, the NPA, and Minister Lamola's department, if you will. Where is that relationship? Where is that thread? Because the one thing that seems to be clear is that the SIU is at the forefront of multiple successful prosecutions and successful recoveries. What is the link between the three entities?
The most common one is to say, firstly, they're protecting the South African coffer. Secondly, they are using legislative framework that is similar to all the others. So that would mean whenever they would go to court or to any tribunal or forum to say that we want to enforce the powers that have been given by the president, for example, or any law, then the system is going to be the same. Investigate, prove beyond reasonable doubt, make sure that there's a presiding officer which is going to decide the matter. That particular presiding officer must decide in your favor, so you must be able to find qualitative and quantitative evidence that can be used, successfully utilized, so that you're able to come back with the desired results. What seems to be the process, though, it seems as if out of all the three, as you've mentioned, the SIU seems to be more equipped in the number of individuals that are there. Maybe say the professionals that are there are more experienced. Maybe they utilize more your private legal practitioners that would do this type of job on a regular basis, or that actually thrive on making sure that there's performance, or the cases in which they're involved in, they are always successful in. But it seems as if they are much more on the ball when it comes to those matters. But what you must also do is not to maybe throw any shade just to the NPA and paint them as individuals that are not working. They're doing a huge amount of work under immense pressure and lack of resources. The only thing that is lacking is within the high echelons. I think more innovative solutions are required, more clear directives to say this is what you want to achieve as the NPA, and make sure that you are able to optimize those low-hanging fruits so that you are able to regain the trust from South Africans and to say that if you are given certain matters, definitely for sure they're going to be handled correctly.
Well, I'm almost inclined to think that you're being a little bit kind with the NPA, because you're sitting here as a legal expert and you're unpacking these issues for us. I'd imagine that these are the very conversations that the head of the NPA, as well as Justice and Correctional Services Minister, should be having or should have had many months ago in order to see a certain level of success. And the success that we are seeing with the SIU, and I think on its own throws shade, to use your statement, on these two departments.
I think the type of assessment they should be having every single month or every single week to say, give us the progress as to how you are doing, what impediments are you finding, can you then engage the private sector. I think what then happens, and I again stand to be corrected on this one because I don't sit in those meetings. You see the involvement of private individuals or private entities to say, here's a procurement process that you are going to utilize. You can see that you have a certain skill when it comes to prosecuting these matters. Can you come to us and join our team? Because we want to make sure that you are going to come back and have a successful run when prosecuting these matters. I think is what is missing. Second, you are only as good as the investigation that has been conducted in your case. So if the law enforcement agencies have failed to collect the correct and qualitative information and evidence that you can be able to utilize, you are not going to pass the test of proving that those particular individuals guilty beyond reasonable doubt. They are certainly going to find certain things which are not going to work in an optimal manner. So it doesn't start at the prosecution stage. It starts at the investigation stage, in which that means that the law enforcement agencies and the NPA must be able to sit together and say, this is how we're going to strategize when we want to make sure that we want to win these matters. In addition to that, or as a value add, we are then going to provide information to the departments to say, to prevent this type of bleeding from taking place. These are the type of medication that must be applied so that we're able to prevent the bleeding from taking place or any type of embezzlement from taking place in the near future. As to when do they sit together, maybe they would need to come back and account. But in the formal accounting sphere, Parliament is there. The committees are there. They're supposed to come on a regular basis. Even they can issue out statements on a regular basis to inform us as members of the public to say, stop speculating as to how we're doing our work. This is the type of processes that you are doing. This is the type of gains that you have done. And this is what we are doing to make sure that we are able to move forward and to execute our mandate as instructed by our constitution.
My final question, I just want to come back to that failed Gupta extradition. To the best of your knowledge, is this water under the bridge? Is it dead? Or is the Department of Justice and Correctional Services still making efforts of some sort to follow through in this extradition?
I'm not sure as to the actual progress, but from what you've heard in the media, they were still continuing with it. From maybe a media's point of view, I would say maybe it's dead under the water. It has taken too long. Even the case in which the Gupta brothers were being called to come and account for is still taking on appeal. Maybe within this particular year is going to be finalized. But the mere failure of that particular case, it certainly meant that things were not going to move in the direction in which we're going to favor the South African government. And most importantly, if you have the United Emirates saying that we're not going to participate in whatever case that is happening, they certainly cast a fatal blow in the case that we might have had, because if they are not willing participants in this whole process, then we are not going to win at all. So I think what the department is supposed to focus on is to say, let us look for other matters. Maybe we can be able to recover taxpayers' funds. That's what we are looking for at the end of the day. We are going to come back to the Gupta brothers at a later stage, but let us be seen as making sure that we're able to recover those taxpayers' money. That is what is important, especially to me as a member of the public.
Mpumelelo Zikalala, appreciate your time as always. Thank you for unpacking those issues for us.